This weekend started off just like any other Saturday. Garrett slept in a little longer than usual and kissed his wife of 17 years good morning. She groaned, "Garrett, let me get some sleep. I can't catch a break. Whether it's the middle of the night or first thing in the morning, and the girls are probably up by now." Garrett answered, "You're right, but they're not kids anymore. They won't come barging into our room. Let me sleep a bit longer." After that, Garrett got out of bed, threw on a robe and headed to the shower. On his way, he heard some noise coming from their oldest daughter Felicity's room. He realized Nadia, her younger sister, was trying to drag Felicity out of bed, so he left them to it. Once he was done freshening up, Garrett got dressed and went to the kitchen. The girls, clearly tired of waiting, were already seated at the table. Felicity asked, "Are we having breakfast today? Are you hungry? We still have school to go to." Garrett responded, "Why? I'm not sure. You girls are on vacation, remember? You're going to Grandma's today." Felicity pressed on, "What about you? You're on vacation too, and it's a long weekend. It's all up to Mom, though." Garrett suggested, "Why don't you make your own breakfast?" Nadia chimed in, "We could, but Mom won't let us. She says we'd mess up the pans and burn everything. All she can make is scrambled eggs." Garrett asked, "What would you prefer? Oatmeal or semolina porridge like they eat in England?" Felicity answered, "Oatmeal, please, sir." Garrett smiled. "Or rather oatmeal, miss. Daddy's leaving the oats for the horses." He added, "Make sure the semolina's lump-free." Done and done. Now go wash your face and brush your teeth. The porridge will be ready in 15 minutes. Garrett quickly got to work preparing breakfast for his daughters. Meanwhile, Marissa emerged from their bedroom and headed straight for the bathroom. The girls sat down to eat, and Marissa soon came back, her hair neatly styled. Garrett looked at her. She was wearing one of his shirts, and, even after all these years, she still had that effect on him. He recognized her beauty, though every man has his own version of what makes a woman beautiful. He loved her, but he knew something was shifting between them. Marissa sat down at the table and told the girls, "Finish your meal and take your time getting ready. Today, Daddy will take you to Grandma's." Felicity objected, "Mom, you promised we'd go to the ski center for a week. We already packed our ski gear, and we wanted to celebrate New Year's Eve together." Marissa responded, "Girls, sometimes life doesn't go the way we expect, but we'll definitely go to the ski center during spring break, when there's no snow. Or maybe we could go to Palmer. They say they have snow year-round. Now, finish up and get ready." Garrett wasn't thrilled about sending the girls to his mother-in-law's, especially after the deception surrounding the trip they had planned. He could sense a distance growing between him and Marissa, which seemed to coincide with the arrival of Simon, the new commercial director at her office. Garrett knew Marissa and Simon had known each other from university, but she hadn't mentioned her new boss to him. That bothered him, but he trusted his wife to resist any temptation of an affair with Simon. He thought about meeting Simon and having a word with him, but Garrett decided that would only make things worse with Marissa. Still, he kept a careful watch on his wife. To his knowledge, nothing had happened between them, just some harmless flirting here and there. Marissa's decision to send the kids to her parents today made Garrett feel like something significant was about to unfold over the long New Year's weekend, and she would probably want to talk about it soon. He steeled himself for the conversation and made sure he had a recorder on hand to capture whatever she said. His mind raced, but his heart grew resolute. He saw the potential for his wife to tear their family apart, but his main priority was keeping his daughters safe. Garrett knew that talk was coming. Tess had already warned him. What Marissa didn't know was that, before the conversation started, Garrett had gone to the bathroom, washed his hands, turned on the recorder, and tucked it into his shirt pocket. Then he returned to the kitchen and sat down at the table. Marissa remained silent for a moment. Then, she looked at Garrett, smiled for a brief second, and her smile vanished. With a serious tone, she said, "Garrett, there's something we need to talk about right now. Here's the revised version of your second part." Her words were clear, leaving Garrett with no illusion that this conversation was not going to be an easy one. He tried to stay calm, looking away from his breakfast as he asked, "Is something wrong?" "Garrett, there's nothing wrong," Marissa began, her tone softening. "You know I love you. I've loved you and only you for all these years. You've been an amazing lover, husband, and father to our girls. I want to grow old with you. Hell, maybe even die on the same day." Garrett raised an eyebrow. "So, what's stopping us?" She paused, looking thoughtful. "Well, I'm a trained sociologist from our university, but not many of us actually work in the field. Those who do often use population surveys and data analysis to understand social issues, pinpoint their causes, and offer suggestions for improvement. I work in Tyler reading, focusing on Tylerate research, but I still keep an eye on the latest sociological trends." Garrett frowned. "Marissa, this all sounds a bit murky. Can you get to the point? I've read about what can ruin marriages, and I want to do everything I can to keep ours from falling into those traps. What do you think could go wrong for us? We need to be proactive if we want to avoid all those common mistakes." Marissa sighed, her expression serious. "Garrett, I'm concerned about us. The way we're living right now is not healthy. We could drift apart, and if we're not careful, it might end in disaster. So, what do we do about it?" Garrett shook his head, unsure of where she was going with this. "Look, I'm not a sociologist. Maybe we need to see a psychologist. I've been thinking, and maybe what we need is a break from each other. A chance to explore our own lives, meet new people, and then come back with a fresh perspective. We might need a little space to see things more clearly." "A break?" Marissa asked, her voice skeptical. "How long do you think this break should last? A month? A year?" Garrett shrugged, trying to keep things light. "No, not that long. I think a long weekend would do." Marissa's eyes narrowed. "Is that why the kids are going to your mom's instead of the ski resort? We could have sent them to your parents' house, but I already made plans with my mom." Garrett blinked, taken aback by her suggestion. "Wait, are you saying you and your lover made up this whole sociological theory just to get me to agree to a long weekend together?" Her words left him speechless. He had suspected something, but hearing her say it hurt more than he anticipated. "Marissa, I still don't get it," Garrett muttered. "Can you just clarify? Who are you talking about as a lover?" Marissa leaned forward, eyes flashing with a mix of frustration and something else. "I know you're not going to like it, but you'll see in the end. Nothing will change between us. I'll make sure of it. Yes, it's selfish, but I have my reasons. I want to grow old with you. You might not understand that now, but you will eventually. And when you do, you'll apologize." Garrett stared at her, confused. "But who is this lover you're talking about?" Marissa's lips curled into a bitter smile. "I'm talking about Simon, your new commercial director. You had an affair with him back in college, and when he grew tired of you, he cut it off. You moved on to me right away, but not a word was ever said about him becoming your boss. There's more you're wrong about, Garrett." Garrett was stunned, his mind racing. "What am I wrong about?" Marissa's voice lowered, as if revealing a painful truth. "You're wrong to think nothing will change. Everything's already changing." Garrett sat back, feeling a weight settle on his chest. "What's changing?" Marissa's eyes softened, but her tone was firm. "Your attitude toward me and the girls, it's different. Our family's changing, Garrett." She paused, then softened again. "I still love you, but what are you going to tell Felicity and Nadia when this is over? How do you explain our divorce to them? What will they think?" Garrett felt his stomach turn. "Marissa, we're not getting divorced. Our parents don't need to be involved in this. Sociology might be a precise science, but our situation doesn't fit into any theory. You're making things way more complicated than they need to be. Let's just work things out." Marissa shook her head, frustration building in her voice. "No, Garrett, we don't need to complicate things, but we're not going to sit here and pretend everything's fine. If you want to overthink it, fine, but I'm not going to wait for you to make a decision. You take the girls, go on your trip, and when you get back, we'll sit down and talk." Garrett's voice was low, but decisive. "Marissa, we're not resolving anything today. I'm leaving." Marissa's face fell. "You can't do this to me." "I can, and I will, Garrett replied, his words final. I won't go along with your plan. This decision, it's already made. Marissa's mouth opened to say something more, but Garrett didn't wait. He stood up, cutting off her words. I said I was done. But Garrett, I'm done. I'm leaving. Yes, you said that, Marissa replied, her voice bitter, as she tried to regain control. So you're just going to enjoy your long weekend while I'm stuck here? You go off with the girls, and I'll be left here with Simon, planning your future. Just then, Felicity burst into the kitchen. Daddy, we're ready to go. All right, girls. I'll be ready in 5 minutes, Garrett said, his voice steady. He quickly dressed, grabbed his laptop bag, and without a word to Marissa, headed downstairs. He started the car and waited for it to warm up before the girls hopped in the back seat. They drove off without looking back, leaving Marissa standing by the window, her face a mixture of confusion and disbelief. Garrett merged cautiously onto the main road, the car's cabin thick with silence. After a while, Felicity broke it. Daddy, Grandma lives on the other side of the road. I know, sweetie, but you were promised to stay at the ski lodge, and that's where we're heading. We'll figure out where we're staying once we get there. Dad, are you and Mom getting a divorce? Felicity's question hung heavy in the air. Garrett glanced at her in the rearview mirror, startled. Why would you think that? Because we overheard you and Mom arguing in the kitchen today. I'm on your side, Dad, Nadia added from the back seat, her voice small but firm. And I am too, Felicity echoed. Girls, listen, we're staying at Grandma's for now. I'll drop you off at school and pick up your things. For now, let's not worry about anything else and just enjoy our time away. You both deserve it. Meanwhile, Marissa was watching the road pass by, her thoughts far from her family. She took out her phone and dialed Simon, who answered almost immediately. Simon, it's Marissa. We need to talk. No problem. I'm alone. Has Garrett left yet? Yeah, he's heading out. He went to the store, but he'll be on his way home soon. What's going on? He didn't react the way we expected. He didn't believe me. Who didn't believe you? My husband. I offered him the separation we discussed. And did he agree? He knows about you and me, our history from college. Now he's talking about divorce. That's not good. It's going to stir things up. It'll get into the office gossip mill, and Tess will hear about it eventually. Tess? I'm not worried about that. But Simon, I'm worried. I don't want to divorce him. You've never wanted to, have you? Simon replied, his tone a mixture of amusement and concern. So what now? Is Garrett back yet? No, he's still got to drop the girls off at my parents' place. Then he'll come home. I'm sure he's not leaving. Tell him there's no temporary separation. It's over. I did, but he didn't believe me. He thinks I'm just going to talk him into agreeing when he gets back. When will he be home? 3 or 4 hours, I think. Perfect. In that case, tell him it's final. No more separation. We need to let him cool down. We can't let this reach the office. If it does, it'll complicate everything. Marissa hung up, feeling a slight relief settle in. Simon's advice was clear, and she needed to follow it. The plan was set. She looked around her house, wondering if her decision had been the right one. The temptation to go back to Simon, her old flame, weighed heavily on her. Was it worth everything she stood to lose? She wasn't sure anymore, but she was in too deep. As the hours ticked by, she turned her focus to the evening. She set up the dining table, avoiding the need to cook. She threw on a dress, went to a cafe for takeout, and even grabbed a bottle of wine. She placed 2 glasses on the table and a corkscrew beside them, ready for a quiet evening, one that might give her some answers. In the living room, she turned on the TV, curling into an armchair. Her mind wandered to the past, to when she and Simon first reconnected. She remembered his words, spoken with quiet restraint. I've always liked you, but I can't risk ruining my family. I'm not ready to cut off contact with you, but it has to be discreet. The thoughts of her decisions and their consequences clouded her mind. Would Garrett come back soon? Was he already on his way? For hours had passed, and there was no sign of him yet. Finally, Marissa dialed her mother's number, and after a short delay, she picked up. "Hello, dear. Just checking in. How are you?" "Mom, what's happening?" Marissa asked, feeling a knot tighten in her stomach. "It's winter here. The days are short, and we're sitting with Grandpa having one of our little arguments. You know how it goes." "What's the argument about?" Marissa asked, though she didn't really care at the moment. "Same as usual. He wanted a drink, but I refused. Then he found where I hid the bottle." Her mom chuckled, but Marissa could tell it wasn't genuine. "What about you? When are you bringing the girls over?" Marissa knew from the conversation that Garrett still hadn't returned. After hanging up, she immediately called Garrett's parents, hoping for some clarity. It was Garrett's father who answered this time, his voice steady but clipped. "Marissa, is that you? Come on, be honest. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing." "Marissa, don't try to fool me. You're really just looking for Garrett and the kids, right? He warned us this might happen." "So, was he at your place?" "No, he didn't come by. He called and told me you're getting a divorce." "That's ridiculous. We had a misunderstanding, but we're not splitting up over something like that." "I get it, but it's not just about you two. It involves some guy from your work." "What did he say?" "He told me that this morning at breakfast you suggested a 2-week separation. When he didn't agree, you said you'd call it off but wanted to discuss it again when he came back. Is that right?" "No. Garrett said he's done with all the discussions and has decided to divorce. He's gone off to figure things out and won't be back. He thought you were still at home, waiting for him, causing more trouble. But I don't have any plans for dates." "Marissa, that's not true. Garrett knows about the guy you're seeing. When I suggested he drive up and handle it face to face, he said, 'Dad, I don't care. I have daughters, and they're on my side.'" "Where did he go?" "He didn't say. We were so upset, we didn't even think to ask. If he calls, tell him he misunderstood everything. I've done everything I could for our family, but now I realize I messed up. I don't even know my daughter. We've been together with my wife for so long, and even during the hardest times, we never thought about separating. Who put these crazy ideas in your head? And if you've fallen for another man, why make everyone suffer? If you're ready to leave your husband and kids for a lover, just pack your bags and go. Stop ruining things for everyone else. Garrett will get over it and he'll probably be better off. He's not old or unattractive, and the girls will be fine with him." "What are you saying? There will be no divorce?" "That's what you think. I know my son and you clearly don't. I just need to explain everything to him, and he'll see he was wrong. Whatever. He'll call. I'll tell him." Marissa called Simon's phone, and to her surprise, a woman picked up. "I'm here." "Excuse me. I'm looking for Simon." "Who are you?" "My name's Marissa. We work together." "Oh, I know. Let me tell you, honey, I kicked him out. Don't bother calling him. He doesn't have a phone anymore." "Is something wrong?" "You don't know? I've moved cities twice because of this cheater and womanizer, but I'm not leaving this new house." "Where's Simon?" "How should I know? I kicked him out." "Maybe he's at your place." "He doesn't even know where I live. Why would he be at my place?" "He knows everything, including your address. He's with you at work, but he wasn't the only one involved with you. He planned to meet up with everyone while I was on vacation. But the thing is, I wasn't going anywhere." Meanwhile, Garrett and his daughters were heading to a ski resort outside of town. Garrett knew some of the staff there and called one of them during the drive. It turned out that Tyler, a former classmate, was now the director of the resort. After explaining his situation, Garrett asked if he could accommodate him and the girls for the winter break. Tyler said, "Garrett, of course. A house for 3. Sounds like a dream come true." "Perfect. I've got a company waiver and 3 cabins available. I'll reserve one for you." "Great. Just one thing. I don't want anyone to confirm that I'm here with my daughters for vacation." "No problem. I'll reserve the cabin." "When are you arriving?" "We're about an hour and a half away. Can't drive too fast with these slippery roads." Got it. I'll set the table in your cabin by the entrance. Just tell them you're here to see Tyler, and they'll direct you. An hour and a half later, they arrived at the ski lodge's gates. They told the gatekeeper they were meeting Tyler, who directed them to the correct spot. They parked in a sheltered lot near the lodge, grabbed their bags, and made their way inside. Tyler was waiting at the table. Seeing them come in, he said, "Hurry up. Everything's getting cold. You're always rushing. Let my girls freshen up, wash up, and explore a bit. There are 2 bedrooms upstairs and 1 on the ground floor." Felicity and Nadia, taking their things, headed upstairs. They'd already changed into their tracksuits and were happy with the room. Garrett's daughters were growing up and looking great. "Where's Marissa? Why hasn't she shown up yet?" "That's a whole different story. I'll tell you later. Let's toast to our reunion." "You're eager, yet moving so slowly." The friends raised their glasses for a toast, reminiscing about old times. Every so often, they were interrupted by Garrett's daughters, who asked questions. Eventually, Nadia turned to Tyler, curious about what else they could do at the ski lodge. "There's a dance party happening in the hall right now. We didn't bring anything for dancing." "No worries. There's no dress code. Come as you are, no specific rules to follow." "Can we go too?" "Absolutely. I'll call one of my staff to take you there." Tyler made the call, and not long after, a young staff member appeared to escort Felicity and Nadia. After they left, Tyler turned to Garrett, asking about his wife. "Have you decided on a divorce?" "Why would you think that? Remember when I used to date her? There were whispers about her seeing someone else." "Yeah, I heard rumors, but nothing concrete." "Well, this guy from out of town shows up and becomes the commercial director at Marissa's workplace. They start an emotional affair, which I didn't realize at first. He's married to a woman named Tess, who's now divorcing her husband. She came to me with the truth, and today it all came out. She cheated on you." "No, it was actually decided that we shouldn't vacation together for the long weekend, supposedly to help strengthen our marriage as we get older." I've always been skeptical of sociologists. Sociology feels like it's the study of society by people who don't understand it, and then they try to push their made-up theories onto us. You're right about that. It sounds like they made these ideas up just for me. "So, what have you decided?" "When I talked to her, I realized staying together would be unbearable. So I've decided on a divorce." "So what happens now?" "Nothing immediate. I need to figure out the next steps. I've got a group of lawyers coming here tomorrow. They have an office downtown. I'll consult with them for help." "All right. Then pour us a drink." Felicity and Nadia returned from the dance around 11 p.m. A staff member had made sure they were well taken care of and escorted them back to the lodge. Garrett fixed a late meal for the girls, and they ate together before heading to their rooms. Garrett sat on his bed, fighting back tears. It had been an exhausting day, and he couldn't shake what Marissa had done. He turned on his tape recorder and listened to the recording again, reminding himself that his decision was the right one in the current situation. Marissa had never waited for him, and she had no idea where he might have taken their daughters. But Garrett remembered what he had said before. Promises should be kept. They had promised their kids a trip to the ski lodge, so that's where he went. He suspected reservations had been made ahead of time. She powered on Garrett's usual computer, but after an extensive search, she found nothing. There was no information about any ski lodges in the area he had been looking into. The next morning, Garrett was awakened by a knock on his door. He called out, "Come in," and his daughters burst into his room, full of energy. "Daddy, wake up. Let's have breakfast and go skiing. After that, we can go ice skating." "Is there an ice skating rink here?" "Yes, there is." "And where do we have breakfast?" "At the cafe. Wash up, and I'll be ready in 5 minutes." After changing into their ski gear, they headed to the cafe for breakfast. They rented skis and took the lift up the mountain, skiing until lunchtime. In the afternoon, they returned to the cafe. After changing, they bumped into Tyler and his wife. Tyler mentioned that the company he had talked about had arrived, including a divorce specialist. "Meet me in my office today. I've got a computer and printer, everything you'll need. I'll take your girls, my wife, and her sister to the ice rink tonight if you don't mind. We'll meet at my place afterward. The girls want to go dancing again. We'll join them, have a good time, and then head back to our cabin. And don't forget, tomorrow is New Year's Eve. We need to get ready for the festivities. Everything was planned. After lunch, Amos and Garrett went to Tyler's office. Soon, a lawyer arrived, and they began discussing Garrett's situation. Vivian explained the legal landscape to Garrett, who wasn't familiar with the process. She advised him not to make any hasty decisions about the apartment. Remember, your daughters will grow up and eventually have their own families. They'll need their own space. If you move into the apartment with them now, a new husband in the future could complicate things. But I can't imagine living in the same apartment as her. Garrett protested. Try to picture it.
Meb propose à partition.
First, tell your wife that you'll be filing for divorce in court. When will the paperwork be ready? Don't worry. The courts have their holiday weekends too. I've got my laptop here, so I'll prepare it and we can print it later. You can reach me at my office or hire me to represent you in court if needed. I like the last option. Garrett and his daughters rang in the new year with Tyler, his wife, her sister, and a group of lawyers in the ski lodge's spacious hall. Other vacationers joined in, and the night turned into a lively celebration filled with music, laughter, and dancing. By the early hours of the morning, Garrett returned to the cabin with his daughters, both exhausted and ready to sleep. Meanwhile, Garrett rejoined the rest of the group, and when the festivities in the main hall came to an end, they all gathered in his cabin. They sat around the fireplace, chatting and relaxing, before retreating to their respective cabins for the night. The following days played out as planned, with more skiing, ice skating, and evening dancing. Tyler asked Garrett one evening, "How are you holding up?" Garrett replied, "You know, aside from the fun during the day, there were nights when I cried more than I care to admit. But today, I feel more prepared for what's coming than I ever have before." Finally, the day came when Garrett and his daughters packed up for their journey home. Before they left, Garrett took a moment to have a serious talk with them, stressing the importance of not losing their apartment. On the way home, they made a stop at the mall to pick up some groceries, and as night fell, they returned to their house. Felicity and Nadia immediately set to work rearranging their rooms, with Nadia moving her things into Felicity's room. At that moment, Marissa entered the room and asked, "What are you two doing?" "We're turning Nadia's room into Dad's room, and we're going to share one room now," Felicity explained. Marissa raised an eyebrow, clearly disapproving, and asked, "Why?" Nadia responded, "That's what Dad said." Marissa wasn't satisfied with the answer and warned them, "I won't tolerate any of your boyfriends in the house. You can hang out anywhere you want, but just so you know, I'm filing for divorce." With the room changes complete, the girls prepared for school the next morning while Garrett began making dinner and breakfast for the day ahead. Marissa walked in and tried to start a conversation, but Garrett refused to engage. She then went into the girls' room, asking if they wanted to talk. The girls, however, replied that they hadn't missed her, and Garrett firmly told them to stay out of his way for the rest of the week. Garrett, Felicity, and Nadia continued to live separately from Marissa, with Garrett locking the doors to the rooms they occupied. He cooked for himself and the girls, deliberately ignoring Marissa's presence. On Friday evening, a young woman arrived with a registered letter addressed to Marissa. It was a summons along with a statement of claim. After reading the documents, Marissa rushed into the kitchen, tears streaming down her face, and demanded to know why Garrett wanted a divorce. She pleaded, hoping things could be worked out. Garrett, cold and composed, told her, "You should talk to a lawyer and work this out with him." Marissa mentioned Simon's disappearance, but Garrett simply suggested she reach out to him for help. Marissa insisted she had no one to turn to, but Garrett remained unmoved. The girls had already eaten and had gone to their room without a word to Marissa. Desperate, Marissa continued to plead with Garrett, telling him how much she loved him and the girls. Garrett, his voice calm but firm, responded, "What does love have to do with it? I loved you, But that was before I found out you were cheating on me with your old boyfriend, someone you never even mentioned to me. I realized it was foolish to keep loving you. You wanted to talk? Fine. Go ahead. Tell me about your perfect weekend. What was your plan? How did you spend it? It's been a while since I've heard your wonderful sociological theories. Enlighten me with your new stories. And tell me, how did you spend your weekend? Was it fun? I thought it was great that your friend disappeared again. So let's talk about that. Garrett finished his meal and began gathering the dishes in the sink. Hearing the clatter, Felicity came into the kitchen and offered to help with the dishes. Garrett declined, telling her, "You should go upstairs and tidy your room. I've got the dishes, and I'll take care of ironing your clothes. They're already dry." Marissa, feeling completely disregarded during the conversation and sensing that Garrett no longer wanted to engage with her, became overwhelmed with emotion and retreated to her room. Meanwhile, Garrett quickly washed the dishes, turned off the lights, and made his way to his own room. He noticed the pile of laundry he'd washed earlier in the week, waiting to be ironed. Before heading to bed, Garrett made a brief trip to the kitchen, where he found Marissa sitting in the dark. Upon seeing him, she spoke, her voice strained. "Garrett, none of this was planned. It just happened. I was seeing Simon back in university, and then he disappeared without a trace. No, I wasn't forced into anything. Very few people even knew we were dating, and hardly anyone knew he ended things with me so suddenly. Then he showed up at work, and we started talking because of work-related matters. One day he asked me to lunch. First, it was just lunch, nothing more. But then something changed. He made it clear from the beginning that nothing should look suspicious, that everything had to be kept discreet so our spouses wouldn't find out. I reluctantly agreed, thinking it was just a fling, something with no future. The separation was meant to be just that, our first and only date." She paused, waiting for Garrett's response. "So, is that why you created the story you told me? I never realized it would go this far, but I agreed to Simon's proposal." "Garrett, can't you see? He was just using you. Can you really be so naive?" Garrett shook his head, the frustration evident in his voice. "No, it's not that. It's been ages since you've complimented me. On my looks, my clothes, or even my hairstyle. But don't try to blame all this on me just because I haven't been reminding you every day how beautiful you are. That doesn't justify having an affair. Are you really saying that you'd be willing to cheat on me with anyone who gives you a compliment?" Over the next few days, Garrett prepared for an important meeting with child welfare officials. According to his lawyer, Vivian, their opinions would carry significant weight in court, though the children's perspectives were also critical. Garrett had a lot on his plate in a short amount of time, and when night fell, he struggled to sleep. His thoughts were consumed with the themes of love, loss, and betrayal. The one person he had trusted most had torn his world apart, leaving him to grapple with a complex mix of anger and hurt. All Garrett wanted now was a divorce. It felt like an impossible dream, but he had lost all faith in Marissa, and their marriage was beyond saving. He also had to think about his daughters, who had distanced themselves from their mother. One day, Marissa argued that for the sake of the children, they should remain married and try to fix things. Garrett's response was firm and clear. "I believe our children need to know that their parents love them unconditionally. Our daughters are not responsible for what happened. They're old enough to form their own opinions about us. And you need to understand that I've never badmouthed you to them. They've made their judgments based on what they overheard when you were criticizing me during our temporary separation. Garrett, I'm proud of our kids. They picked up on what was going on between us and your lover. They talked it through, and I'm sure their decisions weren't made lightly. When we left, they were furious with you. Talking to them changed everything for me. It changed my plans for the long weekend and the course of my life. The girls know more than you think." Marissa, her voice tinged with uncertainty, asked, "Do the girls hate me?" Garrett replied without hesitation. "For someone with a degree in sociology, you sure seem to understand surprisingly little about human behavior. Yes, they know their mother was unfaithful, and yes, they're angry with you for it. You could try to rebuild your relationship with them, of course. But as a sociologist, You should know better than anyone that adolescence is a time of great emotional transition. It's a stage when children shift from childhood behavior to more adult-like behavior. They go through significant physical and psychological changes. It's hard to predict how you'll manage to connect with them, given everything that's happened. The days leading up to their court appearance were filled with negotiations and attempts at reconciliation. Eventually, they found themselves facing each other in the courtroom for the preliminary session. They were given time to try and resolve their differences before proceeding. When that time expired, Garrett proposed that Marissa sign a child custody agreement as part of their divorce. Under this agreement, their daughters would live with him. After hearing everything, Marissa firmly declared, "I won't sign any agreement." Garrett warned her, "Then I'll have no choice but to take this to court. The court will hear what I have to say to the girls, and they'll make their decision. It's unlikely to go in your favor." Marissa retorted, "You can't be so sure about that. Court decisions can always be appealed." Garrett gave her a cold glance. "Well, good luck with that." Marissa softened and admitted, "Garrett, I know I've been foolish. I realize now that what I did was wrong. Please understand that I love you, and I'll never have Simon in my life again." Garrett responded with a hint of bitterness. "You've replaced him with someone else." He paused before adding, "Well, that's your choice. It's your life. Don't try to blame me for it. You're a sociologist now, right? If you'll excuse me, I have a lot to deal with. If you do decide to sign the agreement, it should be in front of a notary. Although child residency agreements don't require mandatory notarization to be valid, it's still recommended to have them drafted and notarized." T. Garrett's, "But she doesn't want to sign anything, and frankly, I don't need her to," Garrett muttered. "The thing is, she won't get anything out of this. The court's deadline for reconciliation has passed." Marissa made one last attempt to reconnect with her daughters, but her efforts were in vain. After school, the girls started their computer science classes and then returned home with Garrett. They usually had a light snack together in his room before settling in to do their homework. Meanwhile, Garrett prepared dinner and breakfast for the next morning. One day, representatives from the Child Welfare Department paid them a visit. They spoke with the girls, inspected their room, and compiled a report. Afterward, they attended the court hearing on schedule. Garrett, accompanied by the girls, addressed a few questions with their lawyer. Marissa entered the courtroom and took her seat. She had no lawyer, though she had sought advice from divorce counselors and friends who had been through similar situations. She understood all too well that her marriage was beyond repair. During the trial, Marissa answered the court's questions with brief, direct yes or no responses. At the end of the proceedings, she declared that she was giving up her share of the apartment in favor of their daughters, providing a deed of gift. The judge noted that Marissa had already removed her personal belongings from the apartment, and what remained would be cleared within the week. She requested a brief recess to sign the child support agreement proposed by Garrett. After the recess, she added, "I'm willing to pay child support to Garrett voluntarily because I know the court's decision may not go in my favor." Garrett responded, "To ensure full transparency about the child support funds, I propose that you open a separate account for each of our daughters and transfer the money there. I believe they'll need it when they come of age." The judge listened to both parties and clarified that alimony and the division of the apartment were not part of the initial claim and would not be addressed in this trial. As for the child support agreement and the divorce, these matters would be decided. The court recessed to deliberate. In the end, Garrett and Marissa left the courthouse officially divorced. The girls, who had been excused from the courtroom after their hearing, were sitting on a bench near a bus stop, happily enjoying ice cream. Despite the cold, Garrett approached them with a concerned expression. "Girls, what are you doing? It's freezing out here," they explained, laughing. "We brought the ice cream home, and we thought it would be fine to eat it now. Plus, it can help soothe a sore throat." There was something paradoxical about the moment, but Garrett let it slide. He then asked, "Why did you decide on 19 as the age to access the money?" Without missing a beat, the girls answered, "That's what we decided." True to her word, Marissa moved out of the apartment and in with her parents to care for her ailing mother. Garrett agreed to allow her to visit the girls once a week, though Felicity and Nadia were hesitant about it. On these visits, Marissa spent time with them at their residence. Epilogue. Garrett spent a long time on his own, focusing on his life and his daughters. On New Year's Eve, he and the girls went on vacation to a ski resort, often accompanied by Kat Atta, the sister-in-law of Tyler's wife. A quiet relationship began to form between them, but Garrett wasn't in any hurry to make commitments. For now, his main focus was his daughters, whom he continued to raise with love and care. Kat Atta, who had no children of her own, got along well with Felicity and Nadia, though there was a touch of jealousy at first. Garrett maintained a respectful relationship with Marissa, allowing her visits with the girls and keeping the lines of communication open, but they were no longer a couple, nor were they friends. Felicity and Nadia grew into young adults without causing much trouble. Garrett, ever devoted to his daughters, surrounded them with love and care. He saw Katata's arrival as something positive, believing it brought the family closer together. Marissa, on the other hand, endured a difficult year. Both of her parents passed away one after the other. Garrett assisted with the funerals, but their shared sorrow did little to heal the rift between them. For a long time, Marissa lived alone, with her daughters remaining her primary source of social connection. In time, Marissa began a relationship with a widower from a nearby house. Simon, her former partner, never returned to town, and his whereabouts remained a mystery, one that even his ex-wife, Tess, couldn't solve. She had remarried not long after their divorce.